Hello, hello, and welcome to another podcast episode of Overpowering Emotions, where I talk all things big emotions, emotion regulation, resilience. We're on our journey of resilience. And over the past few weeks, I've readdressed the importance of mindfulness and acceptance. They're really foundational to emotion regulation, managing our emotions. If you missed those episodes, don't worry, you can always catch up later. Check out the episodes linked here or in the show notes. I will do a quick refresher, just a little reminder, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So mindfulness, it's all about being present and aware of our emotions without passing any judgment. It's kind of like, turning on your own personal radio station and just listening to whatever is playing. You're there listening. With acceptance, it's not judging whatever is on, right? You're just objectively noticing what is playing on that radio. So it's not about tolerance. It's not about gritting your teeth and tolerating whatever's coming up. It's about recognizing, validating all emotions, even ones that are uncomfortable, even if they're making us squirm. So most of us wish that we could just hit the delete button on anything that's uncomfortable. That's one of the things that I often ask, if clients are coming in to see me, if I could push this button and get rid of all of your anxiety or sadness or whatever is, going on in your life, would you want to get rid of it? And everybody says yes. Just get rid of it, completely get rid of it. And as adults, we want our kids to feel better. So we want to get rid of those uncomfortable feelings for them too. But by doing that, it's only making the emotions harder for people to cope with when they do come up. And we're really crippling kids' resilience. And I'll be talking a lot about emotions in terms of their function. There's a reason why we feel them. So instead of trying to get rid of them, we need to validate that discomfort. We got to acknowledge and be honest about, yes, they're uncomfortable, but we got to understand even those gross feelings are really important. We wouldn't feel them if they weren't. Emotions are like little messengers. They alert us to important events, whether internally something's going on or externally something's going on, and it's pushing us to act, right? They really drive our behaviors. So if we're going to get to a place of acceptance, since we can't get rid of emotions, it's really important for kids and for us to know that every emotion has a purpose. It's a natural part of being human, and there's a reason why we have to have it. So when we know that there's a purpose and that there's signals, they're telling us important information, that helps us to avoid the temptation to avoid those negative emotions. Emotions protect us. They're essential for our survival. We would have never survived as a species over the hundreds of thousands of years if we didn't have any emotions. So it's just like when we feel pain. We need to feel pain because that's warning us that there's damage to our body somewhere, right? We need to feel that. And emotions tell us information about what's happening, again, either internally or externally in our world. So those emotions then are going to drive our behavior. They're going to influence how kids respond to the world around them. Okay. So we need to understand those things because they do, those emotions do serve really unique purposes, and it triggers very specific behavioral responses to navigate our environment, to make sure that we're staying safe. So I'll review a few of the different emotions and some of those corresponding behaviors just to help us make sense of them. And actually, I will create a little infogram too, and I will put that in the show notes that you can access, and you can use that as a guide, when you're talking about this with kids, because it's really important for them to learn. So let's start with fear, because that's an easy one. That's one that we're always talking about on this podcast, just around anxiety. So fear, obviously, it's essential for survival. When we encounter danger, we have to feel that fear so that the fight or flight response kicks in. So that's the behavioral response. It's preparing our bodies, revving up to either run away from whatever the threat is, or to fight it if we have to, or to freeze in place, whatever is going to be most helpful in that moment. It's really instinctual, right? It's just an automatic reaction, so automatic it's outside of our awareness. It increases our chances of survival, especially if there's a hazardous, dangerous situation. So recognizing and managing fear can help us make better decisions in stressful circumstances. Without fear, We're not going to recognize dangerous situations. We might get eaten then, right? Or just face really serious harm if we don't have that fear response. And so that running away or fighting are really key to be able to protect ourselves. Now, anger is another one that we still need to have. I have so many parents bring their kids in and tell me, just get rid of their anger. They've got an anger management problem. I don't want them to be so angry all the time. So I always ask parents first, what are they defending? What are your kids defending? What is that anger defending? Parents can rarely answer that question. They just know that they don't like the anger and they want it gone. But I'm not working on anything until we know what's going on. So when we look at anger, it's arising because of some perceived threat or some perceived injustice or true injustice or threat. So it compels us to assert ourselves or to defend our boundaries. So those are the behaviors, the assertion and the defending, right? So whether we're standing up for our rights or we're protecting a friend, that anger motivates us to take action against those perceived threats. So we can see an underlying fear component here because there is a potential threat. Without anger, kids would be easy targets. They would be picked on, right? They wouldn't be able to assert themselves, what they need, their boundaries. They're not going to get respect from other people. So that anger, it's really helping them to assert themselves and defend themselves. If they're angry, what are they defending? Yes, they need to learn to manage anger constructively, right? For us, it might not be a big deal that somebody stole their pencil and now they're defending their pencil, but it is for them. Their brain can't tell the difference, and it is going to be important for them. So they do need to learn to manage that constructively, but they need to understand that emotional experience first. And that's why the mindfulness, acceptance, and then this understanding all comes together. So we just need to take a step back and just know, how are they defending themselves? That's important first. Okay. Sadness, it signals a need for support. It signals a need for self-reflection. When we're sad, we often will withdraw, right? A lot of times people don't want to get out of bed. That's a huge piece. And we need that time to withdraw so we can process our emotions. Or we're maybe seeking out comfort from trusted adults in our life. So that withdrawal, like I said, it's really important. It's allowing us the time that we need to grieve. Usually there's some sort of loss. It gives us time to reflect, and really it's giving us time to heal. So we need to acknowledge that sadness and that need to withdraw and the need to reach out for support. That's going to help us navigate through those difficult times more effectively. Without sadness, I mean, kids, any of us, we can become a glutton for punishment because we've got these unattainable goals, right? We might be unable to process that loss. We might not be able to ever resolve any grief. And so we just have this ongoing distress. So we really see that withdrawal and that seeking support. Those are the behaviors trying to manage that sadness. Misery, even. I mean, beyond the sadness, misery is important too. It's absolutely unpleasant to be miserable, but it can be a really powerful motivator. It can push us to change our circumstances. It can help us set new goals. It can help us, strive to be better. So acknowledging and understanding misery can really help us to use it in a constructive way to motivate that personal growth and improvement. And we hear so many people, spiritual leaders or just great leaders who hit rock bottom. They were miserable. They were feeling that misery. And so that misery gave them that motivation to make a better life. So without misery, kids often lack that future motivation, and it leads to stagnation. So we can see how important that misery can be, for to be that motivator for them. I worry that kids get stagnated all the time because they're on screens all the time. And so because they're stimulated with screens, they're not actually feeling any of that misery. And so they're never motivated to do anything different. And that's a bit of a problem. Shame is also important to consider too. I know a lot of people say we want to avoid feeling shame, but there's a reason why we have it. We wouldn't have shame if it wasn't important for our survival. So shame, it shows up when we perceive that we have violated social norms. We have violated some sort of expectation. It feels terrible, right? Because usually it comes with feelings of humiliation and embarrassment and even worthlessness. So, with all of these emotions, even shame, we need to have it. Shame helps us to learn from our mistakes. It highlights behaviors that maybe aren't aligned with our own values or society's expectations that are important for us, society and groups and communities that are important for us. And so it really encouraged us to do what we need to do to belong to our tribe. And again, from the survival standpoint, that's always been very important to be part of the tribe. Disgust is also a protective emotion. I love using that one as an example with kids, but it helps us to avoid harmful substances or situations. It's very instinctual. It's an instinctual response that prevents us from eating rotten food. I like sharing it with kids because they say, it prevents us from eating poo. It prevents us from coming into contact with a disease or maybe even socially unacceptable behaviors. So understanding and respecting our feelings of disgust, just like everything else, I mean, it's disgust is keeping us healthy, right? Because we're avoiding things that are going to cause health problems for us. We don't always have to just focus on the uncomfortable feelings. We can focus on feelings that we enjoy feeling as well, right? The ones that feel a little bit better. So, joy. It fosters social connections. It fosters engagement. When we experience joy, we're more likely to reach out, to connect with others. We want to engage in activities, right? We want to do things that make us happy, that are just promoting our well-being. Joy strengthens relationships. So we can see a lot of those connecting and engaging behaviors. Excitement. I mean, excitement feels the exact same way in the body as fear, but it's all about our perception. So, excitement, it propels us to explore new things, new experiences, new opportunities. It really fuels our curiosity, right? It helps us to attend to new things. It allows us to build our resilience. And whenever we're discovering, we're growing and we're becoming more resilient. So embracing that excitement, it can open new doors, new adventures, right? It's going to boost our enthusiasm for our daily life. So we see these, attending and exploring behaviors. All of our kids need so much more of that, really, at the end of the day. So understanding how those emotions help us boost kids' emotional intelligence is really important. And so now once they have that understanding, we can help them identify and observe and just sit with those emotional experiences. What am I feeling right now? What is the purpose of this? So we can start figuring out what are these emotions trying to tell me? That's really important. So because, if we're becoming aware and we're accepting what's happening inside, what those physiological feelings, which I will be talking about next week, but we can just sit with those and understand the purpose of what they're feeling. Kids can learn to respond to those emotions in helpful ways. That's what's going to help them regulate their emotions instead of trying to control them, suppress them, avoid them, run away, act out. Right. And now we, as the adults, can support kids in helpful ways too, to become little emotion detectives and figuring out, what's going on? What is the message it's trying to tell me? Now, with each of these, I like to share examples, just from our own experiences so that they can really connect. So I focus a lot on cougars because I'm terrified of cougars and I often hike alone. And so I'm always worried about cougars. And that's a real threat, right? I don't think it's too excessive. So, if you imagine yourself, and there's been times where I've thought there was a cougar lurking, right? But if you imagine yourself, you're out hiking by yourself and you come face to face with a cougar, what are you going to do? Your body is immediately going to take over to protect yourself. We're immediately going to get big. We're going to get angry. We're going to try to scare it away. So I need both fear and anger. That's emotion in action. It's serving its purpose. So I have the fear, but it's going to come out in anger, and I'm going to feel that in the moment to protect myself. Once the cougar runs away and is scared, I'm going to break down, trembling, terrified, right? You're going to see the fear a lot more. And that's my inner healing. The shaking is the inner healing, just to help myself process and overcome, that traumatic, potentially traumatic event. So We can share examples of that. Ask times maybe where they were scared or sad and they showed anger and maybe felt anger as well, or a mix of emotions. So we can ask them about their experiences. I would use a lot of open-ended questions. Maybe, you know, tell me a time when you felt really angry or scared. What was the first thing that you noticed? Maybe it was tightening in their chest. Maybe it was a thought, I can't do this, or this is stupid, right? Maybe they're doing some nail biting. What tipped them off that they might be feeling that way? If they're stuck, bring up a typical scenario that happens. Like maybe, you know, if they get upset that rules are broken at soccer at recess, for example, you can bring those up. And we can break those emotions down into, and we're going to go through these, but into thoughts, our physical feelings, and our behaviors, just so that they can start to see how they unfold, why it's happening, what are the signals, right? So they're just becoming detectives throughout their day, noting those things and then being able to report back. When these emotions bubble up, our job is to respond in helpful ways in real time, right? This is where we are validating. Of course you feel that way. Of course it feels terrible. It feels gross. It feels uncomfortable. And we're normalizing. We're not trying to make them feel better, but we're normalizing. Of course you feel that way. Your brain's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Now, it's just about turning on our curiosity brain, right? I talk a lot about curiosity. It's such an important character trait that all of our kids need to develop. But curiosity, it's just such a powerful tool when we're talking about emotion regulation and resilience. So we really want kids to, you know, turn to their feelings with curiosity. That's going to help them explore their feelings without fear or judgment. So they're being mindful, they're accepting their feelings. That's really the key response we want them to start having whenever emotions show up, is getting curious instead of pushing them away or acting out, right? Because when we're getting curious, then we can respond differently in more flexible ways. We can, you know, use more adaptive coping strategies. So, homework for this week, I'd love for kids to start becoming more emotion detectives. Keeping an emotion diary might be really good. So, we're going to continue the mindfulness, dropping into the body. That's so important. But now I would love for them to be able to write down, I mean, ideally 3 times a day. That would be fantastic, but at least once a day. What was a strong emotion, or what was an emotion that you remember feeling today? It could be happiness, it could be boredom, it could be excitement, anger, sadness, whatever came up. Have them try to remember, you know, what happened, how they felt, and what they did in response. It would be great if they could talk about the potential purpose for this emotion showing up. So if they did get angry, what was it that they were defending? What was the signal it was trying to tell? That's going to be really important. And then at the end of the week, it's good to review that emotion diary just to see if you can see any patterns, right? Ooh, it seemed like at recess every day this week, there was anger was starting to show up, because that's where we can start getting on offense to say, okay, so for tomorrow for recess, what can we do? What can we focus on, right? And I will be talking a little bit more about strategies, because I'm just sort of building. If you can see, just every week, I'm just building, building, building. And it is a process that we can start taking one step at a time. So I'll leave it there for today. So again, keep practicing the mindfulness and acceptance. We're adding that curiosity piece in, where they're starting to become more emotion detectives, looking at the signals those emotions are trying to tell. What is it that I'm trying to defend? What is it that I need to go withdraw to process? That's going to be really helpful. So go help those kiddos be bold and courageous, and I will see you next time.